Welcome in. It is Big Ten today on a Tuesday. Great to have you with us, Dave Revson and Dave Wanstead. We are in the thick of it now. I mean, this is the last week of September. We're a third of the way through the regular season. I think we can really start to draw some conclusions, which is part of what we're going to do here.
Absolutely. Last weekend, there were some heavyweight fights last weekend. That Ohio State game with Notre Dame, I mean, impressive. I thought it was a great football game, really, from both sides of it, really. And that atmosphere, it was outstanding. And, with Ohio State, the thing that jumped at me, and I'm going to get into it a little bit later, defense.
Pretty good.
Real good.
We talked all week about how good Notre Dame was, about how they could run the ball, about how they could throw the ball, and Ohio State did an amazing job of shutting them down. So for all the talk, all the hand-wringing about the offense, and we're going to get into that because I thought the offense showed some great signs in this game as well.
Right.
Defense has been the area where they have struggled these last couple of years down the stretch, and the defense came through for them in a big way. Let's get into our big story. It's not just the Buckeyes, but it's the entire top of the conference. Second-ranked Michigan dominating in the early season in a manner not seen in 75 years. Fourth-ranked Ohio State boasting the second-best scoring D now in the nation after they slowed down the Irish. And sixth-ranked Penn State, which just a couple of years ago struggled mightily to score, remember, now the most consistent offense in the country, at least by the one measure you see there of 30-point games in a row. And I think it's also fair to say that each one of these teams this past weekend had its toughest test of the year. And so you learn the most about teams when they face tougher tests. So let's run through them. We'll do them in the order of rank.
Okay.
We'll start with Michigan. They face Rutgers. I think we all agree Rutgers is a much improved team this year. And Rutgers gave them a game. I mean, driving 17-7 third quarter before Mike Sainristil and the play that really flipped this game and put it firmly in Michigan's control. But what did you learn big picture here about the Wolverines against what is a solid Scarlet Knights team?
Yeah, I'll stay with the defense, since they had probably the game-changing play, the interception for a touchdown. Defensively, and you knew that Greg Schiano was going to be with Shiraka, as the new offensive coordinator. He coming from Minnesota, he had a plan on how he was going to try to attack Michigan. And so it didn't surprise me that Rutgers moved the ball. But after that first quarter, 120-some yards total, the rest of the game, right? I mean, so their defense, again, found a way to play as one of the best defenses in the league. And they showed up from a coverage standpoint. They got sacks. So defensively, hey, check the box. The thing that impressed me the most was their offensive line. They got Blake Corum running the ball again, and I say this for this reason. There's nobody, and you know how close I am with Greg Schiano, fine. But his defensive system with the front seven, pressures, movements, games, it is as sophisticated as anybody in the conference, and I watch them all. And so for Michigan to come in and to be able to adjust to that, block that, handle that, and be able to run the football, to me, that was impressive. That was impressive because the first game or two of the season, we said, oh, their offensive line's good, but is this really a Joe Moore, a winning offensive line, that they have had the last couple of years? To me, they took a big step forward in that area.
With you 100%, right? I mean, this line, there are some new faces here because they won the Joe Moore Award, as you said, 2 years in a row.
2 years.
So they've been the best offensive line in America 2 years in a row. But there are some new faces, some transfers they're trying to integrate. That does take time.
Yep.
And it feels like if you can run for over 200 yards against Rutgers, this is a good Rutgers defense. Is it as overwhelming as it was a year ago in the run game? Not quite yet. Not yet, and they still haven't really figured out a way to get Donovan Edwards involved. And they made a point of saying, we're going to make a concerted effort to get him involved this week, and you saw them trying to integrate him a little bit with the pass game as well. So is it 100% there? Is it exactly where it was last year? I don't think either one of us would say yes, but is it trending in the right direction? Absolutely. And then J.J. McCarthy, I mean, against an inferior opponent, I don't say that in any slight to Bowling Green, but I mean, again, you're talking about Bowling Green versus who you're going to have to play to accomplish the goals that Michigan is trying to accomplish. And he threw 3 interceptions in that game. And man, he looked completely unfazed in this game against Rutgers.
You know what's funny? I've had a couple people say to me, boy, that was kind of pedestrian performance from J.J. McCarthy. I had to go right back and look at my stats. I said, 15 of 21 for 200 and no interceptions. Are you kidding me? I take that every day of the week. I thought he played outstanding let's go back to what I said in the beginning, under a team that is not a 3-man rush team. I mean, they are bringing pressure, and Rutgers brought a lot of pressure. Offensive line handled it up front, but also J.J. McCarthy had to make split-second decisions and get the ball out. I thought, it was a great team win. Team win. But I would say that offensive line, if I was going to give a sticker to the team, I'd give it to those guys.
Agree. And so now that was their biggest test of the year, which really honestly is more a function of the non-conference schedule than anything. They did not challenge themselves in the non-conference. So you play what I think we all agree is a pretty good Rutgers team. Now you have to go on the road for the first time. They'll go to Nebraska. Nebraska's feeling pretty good about themselves. We'll talk about the Huskers in a bit. So that's going to be another challenge against a really good defense. If you can run the ball against that defense, you can run the ball, period. We touched a little bit off the top on Ohio State. I want to dive more into that. No doubt that if you talk about the broad ramifications of a win, this was the win that resonated the most in college football. It was arguably the game of the weekend in college football. It came down to literally the last snap from scrimmage for Ohio State to win it. What did you learn about the Buckeyes on Saturday night in South Bend?
Well, it's always been the years that I can remember, from Justin Fields to C.J. Stroud to all the Garrett Wilson, all the great receivers, Zeke Elliott. Offense. To me, the defense showed up in this game. I mean, they gave up one pass play over 25 yards the entire game. I mean, they went into this game against Notre Dame. Probably the run defense could have been a little better, but I thought pass-wise, they had great pressure. And to win a game like this for Ohio State, your stars have to play like stars. You can get away with it on a lesser opponent, but when you go into South Bend, prime time, national TV, I mean, that's the message. If I'm Ryan Day, to tell them I'm grabbing my stars. I'm grabbing JT on defense and Henderson, and I'm all the stars, Harrison Jr., and saying, hey, you guys got to play big. If we're going to win this game, you got to make plays, and the stars did. Those guys showed up and played, but I thought the defense did a outstanding job getting the ball back when they had to, making some critical stops when you had to. That was the first thing that got me, and then you got to go back to the drive by McCord, right? I mean, for him to go with 1 minute and 20-something left, to take it the length of the field, convert to 2 third downs and a 4th down. Yeah. That was just outstanding. It really was.
Yeah, I was blown away by him. And I was saying this all week. You don't know about someone until you know about them. There was no way to really know how Kyle McCord would respond in a situation like that, because he had never been in a situation like that. And you would know far better than I would. But it seems to me that each quarterback faces a moment like that by definition for the first time in his career. And you could just anticipate coming into this game that there was a better than average chance that Kyle McCord would have a situation like that. Where he'd have his back up against the wall and we'd find out, hey, how does this guy respond? And man, he passed with flying colors. I mean, he was just tremendous. He was tremendous on 3rd down. When they relied on him to throw the ball on 3rd down, he was accurate. He moved the chains, all of those things that you just can't know about a quarterback until they're in that spot.
And on Marcin Harrison Jr., them being teammates in high school, when the critical plays come up, I'm watching that game and I'm thinking to myself, don't force the ball to your buddy.
Right.
And he didn't. He came back to Buka and bang, and made the play. So that kind of separated him a little bit. A lot of quarterbacks in that situation, I got to get the guy, my big guy, I got to get the ball. They got a relationship. All those things come into play. As crazy as it sounds, There's been a lot of games lost because a quarterback has forced the ball to somewhere, and Notre Dame was doing a good job. They were rolling up on them. They were playing them inside, outside. If they were taking one guy away, it was going to be Harrison Jr. So.
And give Harrison a ton of credit for coming back out there after he got rolled up on, right? Ton of tape on that ankle, but he came back out there. He proved what a gamer he is. Not that there's a ton of doubt about that.
If he's on the field, you're covering him, right? If he's on crutches, they're still lining. No, they're going to line somebody up on him. I wouldn't throw them. I'd still throw him the ball.
Before we leave Ohio State, I just want to ask you really quickly, as a coach, were you surprised at Ryan Day and his reaction specifically to Lou Holtz's comments, which frankly, I follow this stuff intently.
Yeah.
I wasn't watching the Pat McAfee show. I don't know what Lou Holtz said. I mean, I don't feel
like... Well, I do.
Go ahead. I don't feel like there were headlines all over the country of, can you believe what Lou Holtz said? Why do you think Ryan Day internalized it to the extent he did and went to that on the field in the heat of the moment after this big win?
Because I think Lou Holtz, who has been doing this a lot longer than both of us put together, probably.
Right.
I thought he made it personal. I really did. When he said about the physicality of Ohio State and Notre Dame, okay, fine, that's all part of it. That's something that you can use in the locker room. Right. But when he said Ryan Day's a guy that hasn't beaten Georgia and hasn't beaten Alabama and lost to Michigan twice, that's not talking about Ohio State. That's talking about Ryan Day personally. So I had no problem with what Ryan Day said. I really didn't.
Oh, I didn't either. I think I was just surprised that he went there in that moment because there's so much positivity. But that's a lot of frustration. There's a lot of frustration. And that's what I think it's about. Yeah. I don't think it's about Lou Holtz necessarily, right? I think that Lou Holtz kind of personified what more broadly goes on when you're the Ohio State head coach,
right?
Which is that you can go 49-6, and all anyone wants to talk about is the 6, right?
No, you're right.
That's the way it is, and that's the reality of that job when you sign up for that job, whether it's fair or unfair. That's what it is, and I have to believe that causes you a lot of stress, and so then you get that moment and you're relieved. And Lou is the most recent person to say what, frankly, a lot of people have said, which is, hey, they weren't able to stop Michigan's run game in down the stretch, and Georgia overwhelmed their defense. But anyway, I don't know.
I think that hit a nerve.
Interesting your take.
I think that hit a nerve when he kind of singled
Clearly
it
did, right?
It made it personal.
Yes.
So
let's dive into Penn State really quickly. Just demolished Iowa. This was, again, on paper, the biggest test of the year, although I think West Virginia continues to prove they're pretty good. But wow.
Yeah, wow. Penn State, I mean, think about it. I mean, they crushed Iowa. They've beaten Illinois, got after Illinois. They beat West Virginia, who's proven to be a good, Power 5 team. To me, Penn State is the most complete team. That's, if you said, tell me one thing from that Penn State-Iowa game, boy, they are the most complete team thus far. And by complete, I mean offense, defense, special teams. They make plays in all three areas consistently. For them to have the drives that they hold the ball 45 minutes, I mean, you know what that tells me is, I tell you what, I am more of a fan now with Drew Eller than I've ever been. Why? You look at Tom Brady. Everybody said this about the Tom Bradys of the world, the great quarterbacks that will take what the defense gives them. When you have drives of 14, 15, 16 plays and hold the ball that long, and you're not running it every down, you're being balanced, run and pass, that tells me that the quarterback is not forcing anything. You want me to throw the check down, I'll throw it down. You want me to throw the tight end? Fine, I'll dump it off to the tight end. Boy, that's an impressive thing. And then Manny Diaz, I mean, God, the defense, 4 takeaways, 3 sacks, 5 tackles for losses. And that's against an offensive line with Kurt Ferentz that takes a lot of pride. Right. I mean, they may not throw for a lot of yards or rush, but they don't give up negative plays, the sacks, the tackles for loss, and Penn State did it with Manny Diaz's defense.
I get it that it's Iowa, and I get that they're struggling on offense, but you hold the team to 76 yards. It is remarkable how well that defense is playing, and I'll go right back to what you said about Aller as well. I mean, this is a freshman, this is a big game, national spotlight, bad weather.
Yep.
Still hasn't turned the ball over.
No.
Hasn't turned it over. The whole team hasn't turned it over all year. To do that in that situation, Pretty impressive. They've been the most consistently good team in the Big Ten to this point. Great call there from our buddy Lisa Byington. The Cardiac Cats live on in Evanston, a program that made a habit of winning games just like that one for years. Been a while, though. A 21-point comeback in the fourth quarter to top Minnesota. First conference win of the year and just their third Big Ten victory in their last 20 outings. It is time for Coach Speak and the man who helped orchestrate that win, the interim head coach of the Wildcats, David Braun. I am reminded, fellas, of the children's book, Mrs. McCabe. 23 sons, she named them all Dave. We got a lot of Davids going here, but Coach Braun, take me back to Saturday night when you pulled that game off. Like, what are the emotions? You showed a lot of emotion on the field. Take me back to everything that went through your mind during that comeback and then when you realized you had won it.
You know, I think a lot of things that were going through my mind over the course of the game was that this is our football team. The football team that we knew we had in fall camp, that we had throughout the offseason, that, you know, has continued to battle. We were really starting to put it on full display. And such a credit to the young men in that locker room that just continued to battle, stayed the course. You know, didn't look at the scoreboard, just continued to lean into playing their tails off, playing for one another. And you know, for it to all come together in the fourth quarter and end the way that it did in the overtime victory was, again, just such a credit to the character of guys like Charlie Mangieri and Ben Bryant and, you know, the rest of this team, the leadership, the captains, everybody.
Coach, it is amazing what you and this program have been through here in the last few months. I mean, for people who don't know who you are, right? Like, you were hired to be the defensive coordinator to fix a defense that had been great for years and fell apart the last 2 years. And so you're brought in from North Dakota State to fix that defense. You've never coached at the FBS level. You've been a very successful FCS assistant coach. And then everyone is aware of what happened at Northwestern in the offseason. Pat Fitzgerald got fired. You were elevated to become the head coach. How have you held this together? I mean, to me, like, it would have been so easy for this team to just kind of say, well, this is a lost season. They lost the guy they came here to play for. Many of them didn't know you. Certainly the offensive players didn't know you well at all. How have you kept it together and gotten it to this point?
Yeah, you know, to be honest with you, it starts at home. My wife, Kristen, has been an absolute rock. You know, just a lot of times as a coach, we all know, you know, if things aren't right at home, it's really hard to be present at what you're trying to do and pour into the young men that you're coaching. And, you know, it starts with her. You know, secondly, have leaned into my faith and, you know, realized that this is a task that is going to require, you know, many hands. The leadership within our locker room, our staff, the support staff, this alumni base, have really just rallied around this group of young men. And at some point in this conversation, Dave, you know, we had to shift even what we were talking about. Yes, this group has been through a lot, but they worked their butt off this summer and through fall camp to go have a great experience and win a bunch of football games. You know, everyone wants to tell us, you know, you guys have been through a lot. Yeah, we have, but it's time to move on. We're here to compete and bring an urgency and an edge to the way that we compete. And at the end of the day, we've worked our butts off to find ways to go win football games. And, you know, I think our group on Saturday showed, you know, some of that confidence and that edge, you know, showing up. And really excited about how we're going to move forward.
Hey, David, a couple of football questions. Was that the old tight end fall down play? The play that scored the win for you? Was it the tight end fall down? That's what I used to call it. It's probably outdated. What was that play?
You know what? It's a play that you know, Coach Bajaki and the offensive staff, you know, we see it plenty in practice, and I saw it plenty at North Dakota State. It was called Y Alabama up in Fargo, and a lot of touchdowns have been scored up in Fargo on Y Alabama. But credit to Mike and the staff for finding creative ways to utilize it, and credit to the guys for executing. Tough play to defend. and the execution was awesome. You know, all the way up in the box, even before the pass was completed, there was excitement and eagerness to see how it was going to finish out, but it couldn't have been completed to a better leader and a better young man. Charlie Mangieri has been a huge part of keeping this team together.
You know, the reason I asked you that, we would run that play, and the tight end would come off, you know what I'm talking, and pretend like he was blocking and fall down to get the whole defense shifting over. Then he'd get up and run out there. Well, I got beat on that play one time, okay? And I swear, for 10 years as coaching, as soon as the team got in the red zone, David, I started screaming, "What's the fall down play?" And the defensive coaches would say, "Coach, they haven't run that play. What are you talking about?" So when I saw that, I loved it. I said, "Oh, here it come." Another question.
It's amazing how our memories as coaches never forget the plays that beat us. You know, it's amazing how that works.
David, I got to tell you, you have no idea what you're dealing with on memory here, right? I mean, Wanny can take you through every single scenario you ever went through as a coach. Oh, a lot of them are positive. They're not all negative.
No, they never scored on us a play again. I don't think they ever ran it, but they never scored again. David, another question. Okay, with the rule, take us through how your week goes as far as how you spend your time, what your assistant coaches are doing, offense, defense. I mean, everything that goes into a week of a head coach, and with you still heading up the defense. I mean, how does that work for you and your staff week-to-week basis?
Yeah, it's been an interesting process, and I've had to learn a lot along the way. Still have plenty to learn. You know, I would hope that anyone that's worked with me over the years would never describe my leadership style as a micromanager. That's not who I am. That's not who I intend to be. In this specific scenario with the context involved, you know, even if I wanted to be a micromanager, that's simply not an option. There's a certain way that I've become accustomed to going through a process in terms of preparing a defense and preparing myself to call a game defensively. It's always been a collaborative effort wherever I've been, you know, specifically most recently at North Dakota State. So the collaboration hasn't changed, but the way that process looks has, and I've really had to lean into delegating responsibility to the defensive staff and trusting those guys and giving each of them an area of expertise to come back and report to the group. And you know, I still put my eyes on it and still make tweaks and adjustments and make sure that it embodies the things that I want to see in the game plan. But so much credit to this defensive staff. They've taken those roles, they've taken ownership in it, they've taken those assignments, the way that these guys are able to adjust with our group on the sideline, with our communication, starting with me post-series, but giving them a couple notes and then saying, "Hey guys, take this and run with it. I'm flipping over to the offense," is a credit to the pros that are in that room on our staff that are an absolute. I'm very fortunate to work with this group.
Yeah, you're a first-class guy, obviously. Just the way you're talking. The one word that you use when talking to us today is leadership with the players. Have you done anything special? Do you go week to week with captains? Do you have a leadership group, or is it just randomly? You know, you're talking to a nucleus of upperclassmen. Is there anything specifically that you've done going through this tough situation to kind of pull those leaders that you keep referring to into one little circle?
Yeah, we have a leadership council that we'll meet with once a week, early in the week, and then I'll meet with our captains, our 5 guys, you know, later in the week as we approach game day. You know, honestly, Coach, that's been a critical piece of all this, but I think the most important part in all of it was, you know, when I was named the interim coach, you know, just took time to sit down with every single guy on our roster and meet with them one-on-one. And you know, defensively, I'd had an opportunity to get that process started and felt like I had some built-up relationships. But again, sat down with every single guy on our roster, defensively and offensively, and just, you know, wanted to get to know these guys, meet them where they were at, and you know, really find out how I can best, you know, serve this team, serve them individually, and you know, I'm at my best when I have good relationships and connection with people that I'm working with. So that process was lengthy, but worth every minute. And what it really reflected to me in that time was what a special group of young men that we have here.
I think.
Coach, I wanted to ask you about the pregame this week. You had kind of mentioned during the week that you had kind of leaned into the old Gary Barnett slogan, expect victory. You talked a little bit in the postgame about the cardiac cats, and that was a kind of a mantra that lived through Gary Barnett, Randy Walker, and Pat Fitzgerald, who preceded you. It's been interesting to me kind of how quickly you have brought yourself up to speed on some of those things that historically have made Northwestern special here over the last 25 or 30 years as they've revived this football program. Was that a concerted effort on your part to learn about it? How did that stuff kind of trickle to you?
That's a great question. Honestly, Dave, it's happened really organically. Number one, growing up in the area as a little guy and then moving up to Wisconsin and observing Big Ten football for as long as I did, I come back to, watching Northwestern beat Notre Dame, back in '95, being at Camp Randall when, Steve Schnurr completes a pass at the end of the game after a Ron Dane fumble. Talk about the cardiac. It's something that I experienced growing up, and I kept no secret that I had a great job at North Dakota State, loved the people that I worked with, but Northwestern was a place that I wanted to be, our family wanted to be. So, I observed this program for a long time, admired it for a long time. Certainly there's been some education on my part that's been needed and truly understanding the full history and context, but a lot of this has just happened very naturally and organically because of the admiration that I've had for the program for such a long time.
Final question, Coach. Your reward for a job well done against Minnesota is now you got Penn State coming in. They are really good, as we were outlining earlier in our show here. What are the keys here as you watch Penn State on tape?
They are a dynamic group in all three phases, very well coached. Clearly have done an outstanding job on the recruiting trail, very talented from a personnel standpoint. And, the keys to this are going to be making sure that we understand our opponent and understand their strengths. It's awfully difficult with this group to find any limitations that we can try and take advantage of. And, at the end of the day, no one expects us to win this football game. The only chance we're going to give ourselves is by focusing on ourselves, leaning into our preparation and making sure that we show up to Ryan Field, at our best. And if we show up at our best, we're going to give ourselves a chance.
David Braun, interim head coach at Northwestern. Coach, again, congratulations. Had a great win this weekend. Really fun to visit with you here on the show. Thanks for taking the time.
Fantastic.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Wisconsin topping Purdue Friday night in West Lafayette, extending its longest win streak ever against any Big Ten opponent. Now 17 in a row. They scored touchdowns in their first three drives, never looked back. They are 3-1 heading into a bye this weekend, and a good time, I think, to take stock of Wisconsin. We're going to run through the winners in the Big Ten West. We'll start with the Badgers. This was an impressive showing on the road, tough atmosphere in West Lafayette, 3-1 at this point.
Yeah.
What have you learned about the Badgers?
I think this game, it told everybody in the Big Ten, everybody in the Big Ten West primarily, take notice. I think they made a statement. They really did. And they're doing it, yes, with a new head coach in Luke Fickell, but this is a completely different offensive system that they're doing with Phil Longo, but yet they remain balanced. They're running the ball, breathing. Alan has a big day. They're throwing the ball with Tanner Mordecai. I mean, they're throwing it. He goes 9 for 10 at one stretch in the game, and then they come back and he has big runs, able to run the ball.
Yeah.
So by them doing that, if I'm defending Wisconsin, yes, we always knew that they would line up and run the football with the running back. But now with a quarterback that's a true threat to run the ball, Rever, that puts a lot more stress on a defending defense. Yes, he can throw the ball. Boy, we've seen him do that. He had 5 pass plays over 15 yards. So they'll make plays down the field. Now all of a sudden he's a runner. That's a lot. And then defensively, again, a new system that they're putting in right there. And they have 3 takeaways. They have the sacks. I mean, they're playing complete defense. I mean, they're giving their offense opportunities, and the key is their offense takes advantage of those opportunities.
Giving up yards, maybe more yards than Wisconsin fans are used to them giving up, but man, they cause a lot of havoc. I mean, this defense feels a little bit different in that way, right? That they're just, you make things really difficult for opposing quarterbacks, and we have seen that here. Really a bummer about Ches Malusi, and our heart goes out to him. Reports out there that he's going to miss the rest of the season. He does have a year of eligibility left. It'd be wonderful if he decides to come back, but that puts even more onus on, hey, can Tanner Mordecai run the ball? And we've seen that he can. Obviously, you have Braylon Allen as well, but we're starting to get a sense of what this is going to be.
You know, the one point that I think, one thing that Wisconsin traditionally has always done led the conference in is possession time.
Yeah.
They would take the air out of the football, as we said, and that gave the other team less opportunities. Where now this team is going to score a lot more points. They're going to cause more havoc, like you said, on defense. But the other team's going to get a few more opportunities, and that's going to lead to the other team getting a few more yards, obviously, with the more opportunities you get.
Let's turn the page to Nebraska, starting to hit their stride a little bit here. 2 straight wins. They were turning the ball over at an alarming rate those first couple games. They haven't here recently, just 1 turnover now in the last couple of games. And the identity is pretty clear. I mean, they are going to lean on the run game, whether it be tailback run or whether it be quarterback run, Coach.
Yeah, I think you just hit it on the head. The biggest difference is not turning the ball over, right? I mean, and they're balanced. I mean, would they have 278 passing and 275 rushing? So they'll, they're going to stress you too from the standpoint they're going to make you defend the whole field. And obviously Matt Rule has said, we want to run the ball. We have a running quarterback. We want to run the ball, but if you let us, we'll throw it.
Right.
And I think their defense will just continue to get better. I mean, they will. This is a brand new system, okay? And Tony White comes in here and he puts in this 3-3-5 thing, and it takes a little bit of adjusting. I think the coaches have done a great job, and so have the kids of adapting to this. And the thing I go back with Matt Rule, he told those seniors and that this was not what you guys did in the past, I don't care. No one can play. I'm Brent. No. Hey guys, let's win now. Let's win. Let's try to get to a bowl game. Make this a positive experience for you guys that have committed and stayed with this Nebraska program. I give Matt Rule a lot of credit for that. I really do.
I do too. I think he's handled this really well. He understands the microscope that you're under in Lincoln, and I think it would be easy in this day and age to just say, hey, let's jettison a lot of these guys because the pressure's on me. People want to win. People are tired of 6 straight years not going to a bowl game. But I love the way that he has built this with a lot of the players who are already there. And then you mentioned Tony White and the defense. I mean, this is going to be a huge test this week, right? With Michigan coming to town. Like, I understand this is a different animal than Louisiana Tech, but they're leading the nation in rushing defense. I mean, it's really been good. How about Illinois? It remains to me a little surprising, but I will say, from where we sat in the studio, and I'm interested in your take from watching it on TV and maybe from afar, it felt like the second half was a little bit more of what we've come to expect. And they were able to run the ball. The offensive line finally started to gel and take over a little bit.
Yeah.
Again, you understand the competition, but you can take some positives out of it versus how they started the game.
True. But what bothers me is, and Brent and I are friends, and I know no one does a better job of preparing their team. But usually when the team comes out of the locker room, how they start the game, even if the team is undermanned, if they're ready and they got those top plays and they come out, start swinging right from the get-go. And the way Illinois has fallen behind these teams, I mean, that concerns me. I mean, you fall behind a Wisconsin, you fall behind a Michigan or Penn State, you're not catching up. It's over. And so I think Brent needs to address that, at practice or whatever he's doing, to get these guys to come out of the locker room and start faster. I think if he does that, then you build the momentum, and then all of a sudden I think you're not behind the 8 ball. You're not feeling the stress and pressure of making plays and catching up. It makes a whole big difference for the coaches calling the defense and offense and the players. So,
How do you do that? Like, how do you get a team to start faster?
Oh, I think and I'm sure that Brett does it. You have your top calls. You just work those situations from a script standpoint and says, hey guys, the first 3rd and 3, this is what we're running. Now you go out and run it in practice. The first time we get in 3rd and 10, this is what we're running. Run it.
Yeah.
and then see if the defense adjusts to it. And and you do the same thing on defense. Guys, this is our first call. Okay, they're in 3rd down and 5. This is the defense that we are going to call. Everybody understand your job. Let's run it and execute it. So I think a little bit more of the script stuff generally helps that part. But then the emotion too. You got to come out emotionally excited. I know it was FAU, but they fall behind this. I mean, they ended up, the numbers were good and they won. Don't get me wrong. But I mean, Toledo. I mean, they could have messed around and lost a couple of these games. I mean,
one play away from losing to Toledo.
Yeah, and then Kansas, got after. I mean, so I'm not comfortable right now with Illinois. There's just something that hasn't come together yet, and hopefully it'll be this week.
Well, they take on Purdue, and those are two staffs with incredible familiarity with one another. So there's some interesting dynamics there with Ryan Walters, of course, having been Illinois' defensive coordinator. I think that's going to be a fascinating game. We're going to talk a whole lot more about it as the week goes on. We just spent a really nice chunk of time with David Braun, so I don't want to dive too much into Northwestern, except to say we're going through all the West winners here. What stood out to you as we talked to him, kind of vis-a-vis this team and what we saw on Saturday at a really impressive way?
I'll tell you what got my attention, Ben Bryant, and throwing the football. I mean, he ended up throwing it, with the overtime, 49 passes.
Well, just one pass in overtime.
Yeah,
right?
but for 400 yards.
Right.
You know what I mean? I did not realize that he was capable of playing that well. I mean, I was impressed. And the receivers was Kurtz, the little receiver, 200 yards. I mean, that's big time numbers. So I think maybe they look at this thing and maybe they come out, and I don't know if this is the week to do it against Penn State, but I mean, we may see them throw the ball, and this will be a confidence builder for this football team. I guarantee you, David Braun didn't say it, but those kids are bouncing around. They're getting in there and they're watching this film. What a win. Guys banged up a little bit. Coach, I'm fine. You know what I mean? All of a sudden, you watch the rally and the excitement of playing at home. I mean, everything about it will be a real positive this week.
It's interesting because there's been so much negativity around this program, but I think what's become apparent is the negativity isn't internal. The negativity is external. And they, to his point, have kind of rallied around one another. And if you can beat Minnesota, when you look around the Big Ten West, there are a lot of teams you can beat.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, that speaks to, hey, we can
toughness, physicalness, and then handling the stress at the end. A lot of great qualities there that showed up before Northwestern.
You can look at each other and say, we can be in a lot of these games and have a chance to win a lot of these games.
Great play calling on the tight end fall down.
It is time for our big stat focusing on Maryland football. Not only are the Terps 4-0 this season, they are a convincing 4-0. Each of the wins by at least 18 points. It's the first time in the history of the program that the Terps have pulled that off, 4-0 with all the wins by 18 or more. They've won 6 straight going back to last year. That is their longest streak in 19 years. And it's funny, we were talking about this in the context of Illinois, but Maryland was one of those teams that had started slowly. A couple games in a row, down 14-0. They finally started fast. They scored touchdowns in their first 3 possessions against Michigan State. What did you see from Maryland?
Well, I hate to keep saying what the defense, but
really good.
And because Leah, his brother Tua, I mean, that's the conversation, right? The quarterback throwing the ball. Michael Oxley, that's his background, offense. But really, the offense has been consistent. The thing over the years, when you look at Maryland and you say what's been missing, it's been the defense, in my opinion. And this year, it looks like Brian Williams, who's been there a couple years, they've recruited players. He's got the players bought into the system. They're playing at a high level. I mean, 5 takeaways last week. That's a heck of a performance that people aren't talking about. 3 interceptions, 2 fumbles, 3 sacks. 5 takeaways. I mean, these guys are playing great defense to complement their offense, and if that's what Maryland has to do for them to compete for the Big Ten championship, the East. I mean, they've got to play complementary football. And 2 thoughts: one, that Michael Oxley's done a great job of recruiting because they have talented players, and 2, it's always been, when you talk outside this, it's always Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Michigan State. No, not anymore. I think this game made a statement that, guess what? we've just moved up the ladder. We've taken a step, and now we want to start competing with the top three. And so, I mean, a lot of credit goes to Maryland. I think they're a very good football team, and they got speed. You know, some of these teams are good teams, but it's you know, it's slow and it just grinds you out. This is an explosive team, offense, defense, special team. You give them a chance, they can make a big play and turn the game around in a hurry.
Absolutely. And they've had some explosive offensive players. The difference, as you're saying now, is defense. They forced 11 turnovers, which is tied for the most in the Big Ten. But to your point, like when you think about, well, what's been missing with Maryland football, defense has been a huge part of it. And then conference play. And part of it is being in the East, and part of it is having to play those teams. So next year, there's no one happier to get rid of divisions than Maryland. But yeah, go ahead.
No, I was saying, you brought up a thought. If you put them in the West right now, right, we'd be saying, you know, Maryland could be the team, right? I mean, in all honesty. So, yeah, I agree with you there. Good point.
So beat the teams you're supposed to beat, right? That's how you move up. They beat Michigan State last week. Now they have Indiana coming up this week, and I think people would look at that and say that's a game on paper that Maryland should win. Where are you with the Hoosiers? I think a week ago we were feeling different about Indiana. They played that great second half against Louisville. Now, I mean, you want to talk about being fortunate to get a win? I mean, 35-yard field goal for Akron that he missed. Otherwise, you lose to Akron. So what do you do now? What stands out with Indiana?
Yeah, hats off to our guy Joe Moorhead, the old Penn State coordinator.
Yes.
He's the head coach at Akron. But I think when I look at Indiana, you know that they're playing hard. That first game against Ohio State, that sent a statement. I mean, that defense, what did they give up? 20 points to Ohio State, and it was because of the effort. So Tom Allen's, he's got this team believing, even though they just barely beat Akron. It's a win. And they're going to be ready for this challenge. The one thing that Maryland's going to get is Indiana's best effort. To me, quarterback play has to be a key in this game, right? Jackson's got to play big for Indiana, for whether it's throwing it, running it. The quarterback has got to make big plays, because you know on the other side that Maryland's going to find a way to score points.
That defense has got to be better coming up against Maryland. I mean, gave up more than 200 yards, both rushing and passing, against Akron. And now, again, you're hung up against a team we both feel really good about in the Terps. Can't wait for hockey either. Just a couple weeks away from the start of the season. Preseason poll out yesterday. Defending national runner-up Minnesota, the favorite. Michigan was picked second. It is time for Wanny's winner of the week. Where are you going?
I'm going with Ryan Day, that physical Ohio State team, and beating Jerry DiNardo's Fighting Irish in South Bend. I've been there as a player and a coach, and it is a tough place to win and play. And I'll tell you what I liked about it, the offense, the composure that the offense kept to go down there and score a touchdown with 1 minute and 20 seconds left in the game. Outstanding. And defensively, hey, give Jim Knowles in that defense. Your stars got to play big. You hold Notre Dame to 14 points, you should win.
Huge win for Notre Dame, huge win for the Big Ten and its perception nationally. Anthony Hare and Pat Forty join me tomorrow. We will see you then.